I mean, today NBC News reported that tonight Vice President J.D. Vance is hosting a meeting, or supposed to host a meeting, with top law enforcement officials to discuss how to deal with the Epstein fallout. Now, that meeting, which again was reportedly scheduled for this evening, was set to include Attorney General Pam Bondi, who, of course, just launched a bogus investigation of Barack Obama to keep Trump happy. It was set to include FBI Director Kash Patel, who was picked for his job after compiling a list of Trump's enemies to prosecute. That's pretty much how he got the job. And it was set to include Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal attorney, who met with Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell just 14 days ago. I can't emphasize enough how wildly inappropriate this is and outrageous it should feel. I mean, just imagine for a moment that Vice President Harris hosted a version of a dinner party, which is what kind of thing happens at the vice president's home, with Attorney General Garland, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and other members of law enforcement to strategize about how to get Joe Biden out of a legal and ethical mess of his own creation. Just how much that would make the brains of the manosphere absolutely explode. And frankly, I wouldn't blame them. I mean, the Department of Justice and the FBI are not supposed to be part of political discussions like this. It's gross that they're even potentially having a political discussion about this. Completely gross. And this meeting at the home of the current Vice President, J.D. Vance, is even worse. I mean, according to a report last night, the focus of the meeting was to craft a unified response to the Epstein case. Of course, it comes as the administration reportedly weighs whether or not to release the transcript of Deputy Attorney General Blanche's interview with Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. And according to that report, there have also been internal discussions about Blanche doing a high-profile interview, possibly with popular podcaster Joe Rogan. I mean, are they going to have a whiteboard with like a pro-con list of that with the Attorney General and the FBI Director? Is that what we're talking about here? I guess they have a lot to discuss. But after word of that meeting went public, a spokesperson for Vice President Vance issued this denial, saying, quote, "There was never a supposed meeting scheduled at the vice president's residence to discuss Epstein's strategy." Okay, I have to tell you, I've written a lot of these, and that is a very carefully worded statement. Is the meeting just not at the vice president's residence anymore? Is it to discuss a media rollout for Todd Blanche, so you just aren't calling it a strategy meeting? Is it just happening another day? We really don't know. And then in the Oval Office, just a few hours later, J.D. Vance lashed out in response to a question about that reported meeting.
Mr. President, is Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw it reported today, and it's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation.
Okay, we're not meeting to just talk about the Epstein situation. So are you meeting? Are you meeting somewhere else? Who knows? We don't know. The point is, they really want us to think that nobody is talking about Epstein right now. But some people who have been impacted by the horrors of Epstein and Maxwell, the most important people in this whole story, are talking. And they have some legitimate questions about this particular meeting. Today, the family of Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide, released this statement. "We understand that Vice President J.D. Vance will hold a strategy session this evening at his residence with administration officials. Missing from this group is, of course, any survivor of the vicious crimes of convicted perjurer and sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Their voices must be heard above all. Any information that may be released by the government should take into account the survivors who wish to remain anonymous for their safety and well-being. They should be consulted first." Of course they should. Now, I should note for the record that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged with 2 counts of perjury, though she was never tried on those charges. But it is no surprise that the administration is not taking Epstein's survivors into account here. They never have. I mean, the Department of Justice has made little effort to include them, to consult with them, even to inform them of their actions. For the administration, this has never been about protecting Epstein's survivors. It's always been about protecting Trump. And so far, it has followed a familiar pattern, one where the justice system ends up rewarding those who help Donald Trump, no matter how reprehensible they may be. I mean, for instance, we know that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche met for 9 hours with Ghislaine Maxwell. And right around that same time, Maxwell was moved from a high-security prison in Florida to a cushier minimum-security prison camp in Texas, commonly known as Club Fed, which tells you kind of everything you need to know. It's a facility where reality TV stars usually serve time for financial crimes, and one that typically requires special permission from the Bureau of Prisons to be able to house a convicted child sex predator like Maxwell. As one former federal prison warden told the Washington Post, someone gave special preference to Maxwell that, to my knowledge, no other inmate currently in the Federal Bureau of Prisons has received. It's a country club. Inmates, if they have a sex offense, are not going to a place like that, period. It's truly unheard of. So why is Ghislaine Maxwell suddenly getting the country club treatment? Who in the government approved her transfer? Does it have anything to do with the fact that she had nothing bad to say about Donald Trump, reportedly? When asked about the transfer, Trump said the same thing he always does whenever a scandal like this is engulfing his administration.
Were you aware of, and did you personally approve the prison transfer for Ghislaine Maxwell that your Justice Department?
I didn't know about it at all. No, I read about it just like you did.
I mean, really? You sent your former personal lawyer, who you rewarded with a role as the Deputy Attorney General, to have a meeting where reportedly only 3 people were there, and you know nothing about it, really? Somebody in Trump's government had to approve this transfer. In just a moment, I'll talk to a lawyer for some of Epstein's survivors who says it's possible this transfer was part of an agreement between the Trump administration and Maxwell in advance of her meeting with Blanche. But before we get there, I want to remind everyone what exactly we are watching happen here. The fixation with what Maxwell has said in her interview, Trump officials strategizing grossly how to spin it, the Deputy Attorney General planning to go maybe on Joe Rogan and talk about it, it's all just reputational laundering for a convicted sexual predator with a history of alleged perjury. I mean, in other words, this is not a person anyone should trust. Remember that Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted of conspiring to abuse minors as young as 14 years old. She's never admitted wrongdoing, expressed contrition, or taken any responsibility whatsoever for her actions. And many of her and Jeffrey Epstein survivors have been imploring the public not to trust her. People like Haley Robson, who says she was sexually assaulted by Epstein when she was a student in high school.
To be clear, Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for her counts of child exploitation and trafficking. Why would anybody give somebody like her, who is a monster and a liar, a time of day to explain anything?
Good question. Then there are other Epstein survivors, like Maria Farmer, who said this about Maxwell here on this program just 2 weeks ago.
I've never met a more predatory, terrifying human being in my entire life, and neither had Virginia Giuffre, and neither has Annie, or Anushka, or many girls like Shantae Davies. There's hundreds of us that were preyed upon by Ghislaine Maxwell. She's a very dangerous person, and she threatened my life on many occasions. I've had to move and be in hiding because of this predatory child predator and just victim predator. So it's completely unacceptable for anyone to call her a victim. The woman is not a victim. She's a victimizer.
And then there's Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most vocal accusers, who said she was groomed and abused by both Epstein and Maxwell for years. Virginia Giuffre died by suicide earlier this year, but here's what she had to say about Maxwell just 5 years ago.
She is a monster. She's worse than Epstein. She did things even worse than Epstein did. Epstein was Pinocchio, and she was Geppetto. She was the guy controlling
the strings.
Jeffrey. Yep, she was pulling the strings. She had his money. He had her contacts. But Ghislaine was much more conniving and smart than Epstein ever was.
The Trump era is full of horrible people who did horrible things, showed no remorse, and found themselves being rewarded for it anyway, because they found a way to do something for Trump. And there are already many hints that we are seeing a similar pattern play out between Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell. Feels to me like the administration is trying to cast Maxwell as some kind of credible witness, which is insane. Someone who was safe enough to be moved to a lower security prison, someone who answered questions for 9 hours. Like that should give her some sort of credibility. It should not. The Trump administration is trying to keep the focus on her and away from the questions they still haven't answered, the documents they still haven't released, the promises they have not kept. But the survivors of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's abuse and their families are not about to let that happen.